محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين المكرمين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لترى بمقدمه الفدا، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we ended with this question. Allah is advising us towards fasting by giving us the end result as kind of an incentive. He says that if you fast, then maybe you'll become muttaqi. Maybe you'll get taqwa. Maybe you'll become more conscious and aware of God. So the question that we ended with was, what does fasting have to do with getting taqwa? How does staying away from food and drink and all the other mufattirat, how does that make me more conscious of God? The last point we had mentioned was about the way that in our daily lives, whenever we're faced with a task, a certain kind of effort, we usually think about it in very physical terms, right? So if somebody can't do something, let's say you have to move some furniture, or somebody asks you to go running or go to the gym, something like this, or play a sport. If you don't feel up to it, you say things like, I don't have the strength, I feel weak, you can't do it. So the way that we try to solve that is through physical means, right? Okay, if you're feeling tired or weak, then you say, okay, eat something, maybe you'll feel better. Or have some chai, have some coffee, have some caffeine, that should wake you up. So we see something which we feel is a physical problem, and we're looking for a physical solution to solve it. Now we have to stop and ask, is this the reality of a human being? Is this our reality? Are these problems that we face when we feel tired? Even, I'm talking about being physically tired. When we feel that tiredness, especially in this month of Ramadan while we're fasting, is that tiredness due to food and drink, or is there something else behind it? Is our reality something deeper than what's physical? Is there something beyond this body? There's three opinions when it comes to the reality of a human being. The first opinion is that human beings are just these bodies, right? You're just cells, you're particles, you're atoms. That's all you are. And this is the opinion of many atheists, certain scientists, materialists, empiricists, etc. Those who don't believe in the immaterial world. They don't believe in metaphysical things and ideas. They say, listen, what you see is what you get. That's all that there is. This body, that's it. There's no soul. There's no such thing as your conscience. There's no consciousness. None of that exists. It's your body, and that's it. Just this physical thing. It's matter. That's all it is. The second opinion, now when you come down to the level of those who believe in the metaphysical thing, is they say, no, there is a physical and there is a metaphysical. There's a physical and a spiritual. And they say that both of these are equal things. So you have to take care of your body when your body is feeling bad, and you have to take care of your soul when your soul needs something. So some of these individuals, especially these new age spiritualists, or people who say, I'm spiritual but not religious, these types, they'll say, okay, for physical tiredness, I'll use physical means, but if I'm spiritually feeling tired, then I need spiritual means, maybe meditation, or some will resort to drugs, things like this, yeah? What's the Islamic position? Obviously, there's a physical and a spiritual, but what is the connection and relationship between that physical and spiritual world? In Islamic philosophy and irfan, they say that, yes, there's a connection between the two. The physical is there and the spiritual is there. Your soul is there. But Are they on the same plane? Are they equal? No. The key is to understand that the body sits at a lower level and the spirit sits above that. Our bodies are just extensions of our soul. To give an example, if any of you have ever played a virtual reality game, right, or use a virtual reality headset, or some sort of augmented reality, anything like that. So if, let's say, there's your virtual reality version, right, inside the game, or inside the program. So now you have these gloves on, you've got your headset, all these things, yeah? Now in there, you have your character, your avatar, you're moving around, you're punching, fighting. I don't want to say anything more violent because we already have enough trouble with that. So yeah, you're doing whatever you're doing in the game. Now, as you move, your character moves there. If you turn left or right, your character will turn left or right. But who's the one doing the... It's you, the real individual, and then you have this fake virtual version of you. You clearly know that when I do something, then my character will do something. It's not that my character is real. If my character feels any pain, or if it's hungry, or if it gets hit in battle, I don't feel that pain. Right? It's not something that I have to take care of. It's just some game. It's a similar connection between our physical bodies and our souls. Our souls are the real version of us. Our spirit is the real you and I. That's what's real. This physical world, I don't want to be an illusion. I don't want to get too into philosophy of Irfan because then everybody's going to go crazy with the Q&A. But for the most part, it's less real. That's the best way we can put it right now. So now how does that tie into our discussion? How does this connect? Where are you going to get your strength from? We have a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. And he explains this point very perfectly. He says, Inna quwwat al-mu'min fi qalbihi. Absolutely, most definitely, the quwwah, the strength of a mu'min is in his qalb, in his heart. That's where it comes from. And of course, we don't mean physical heart here, obviously, right? We mean spiritual heart. We mean the soul. And he continues. He says, أَلَوْ تَرَنَّ ألا ترون أنكم تجدون ضعيف البدن نحيف الجسم وهو يقوم الليل ويصوم النهار. It's like, haven't you seen people who their bodies are extremely weak, they're frail, they're fragile, they're skinny? Looking at them physically, you'd see that this is a weak individual. But what this person does is they can stay awake all night, they can fast better than anybody else, they can be up and recite more ibadat, right? Up more in qiyam and qiyamul layl and these types of things. So that this takes spiritual energy to do that. Look at the example of our ulama. You have these stories of ulama staying up all night, reciting thousands of rakats of prayers, reciting Joshan Kabir and Joshan Saghir and all these long du'as every night. Some of us get tired after like a simple 10-minute du'a. I know I do too, right? Sometimes the surah gets a little too long in namaz, I start falling asleep, I'll be honest with you, right? We like things to be shortened. So it's a spiritual issue. It's not a physical issue, according to Rasulullah. Another good example for us is from the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. Now I think it goes without saying, I don't think I'll find any disagreement in this masjid, that if we want to find the strongest mu'min available, it'll be Imam Ali alayhi salam. That's the strongest mu'min you can find, the strongest creation you can find. The fiercest on the battlefield. The one who rips off the door of Khaybar. So now my question is, how did he get the strength to rip this gate off? Where did he get the strength to defeat his enemies one by one and fight people 2-3 times his size? What, was he hitting the gym every night? Was he taking protein shakes for suhoor? No. Right? He's not doing 100 push-ups. He's not doing anything like that. This is spiritual strength. That's where he derives it from. His iman is driving his physical. His soul, because he knows that's what's real, he's controlling this physical avatar that exists over here. And that's how we have to start changing our mindset. So what does that mean for us? The first point we want to understand about fasting is that Allah perhaps is trying to get us to wake up and say, listen, all these physical things that you keep getting attached to, you need to keep away from that for a little while. Yarhamukumullah. You think that it's this food and drink which is giving you the energy to work and play and study? No, it's not that. And Allah is saying, I can prove it to you. 30 days for 15 to 18 hours, I'll show you. You can go the whole day and you don't need to touch any food. You don't need to touch a cigarette. You don't need to touch water. You don't need to touch anything. And you can survive. And you can work. And you can learn. And you can interact. You can be a human being. Because it's your spiritual energy which is driving all this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this is the first point, is that the physical, Allah showing us through fasting, step away from the physical and get in touch with your spiritual side, the real you. Now, one of the questions that was asked yesterday was about this idea of what happens when we feel the fast, right? You get that, okay, roza lag raha hai, roza, and you feel that roza coming on you. So there's a few different points I want to address over here, because it's a very, very good question, and I know we all face that, right? It would be a lie to say that, okay, maybe for me, it won't be lying for me. I'm a skinny guy. My metabolism works. I really won't feel the fast, I'll be honest, right? I don't really need to eat that much. It's not a big deal. But there are some individuals where they feel like, listen, if I don't have my coffee, if I don't have a certain amount of snacks throughout the day or get my protein or whatever it is, I'm going to collapse. I'm going to die. I can't handle it. Or the minute that their stomach rumbles, they go crazy. Right? So, okay, this happens to people. We have to address it. We shouldn't just blow it away. So what we have to do first is break down this issue of feeling the fast, feeling whatever this idea is. So when we talk about feeling a fast, what do we really mean? When you feel the fast, it means you're feeling hunger, you're feeling thirsty, you're feeling tired. And when any of these things happen, then what's the natural conclusion for most people? You end up becoming angry, you get oversensitive and emotional, or childish, you become rude. Your whole akhlaq goes out the window, right? Why? Because you didn't have your chai in the morning. This is what happens to a lot of individuals. Now, before we go on, one humble piece of advice for those who do this, who are out in the workforce. If you're going to be with non-Muslims, and you're going to fast, and they know that you're fasting, and they see that your behavior is a little erratic, right? A little not normal, abnormal. Please do not blame fasting on your bad behavior. If you're rude to your coworkers or to your boss, to a client or something like that, don't blame fasting. Two reasons. The first is you're making Ramadan look terrible. You're making our religion look bad. If you're there being rude and insensitive to somebody at work, you say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm fasting. Then what are they going to say? What are they going to think? Well, what kind of dumb religion do you have that's making you not eat for 30 days so that you can act rude to people at work? Like, that doesn't make any sense. They would rather you, listen, why don't you have a granola bar and then you come back and talk to me, right? So that's the first thing. We're ruining the name of the religion. The second is you're ruining your own name. It's not fasting which is causing the problem, it's you. You're the individual that's being rude. It's not fasting that's driving you to do that. And why that's the case, inshallah, we'll try to mention in the next few nights. So what happens when people have this feeling the fast? The first solution that comes to their mind is, well, I can't break the fast, but once I have iftar, once I get that sip of chai, once I get a date or a sip of water or that first bite of food, then I'll be okay. Then I'll be back to normal. Then I won't be rude. Then I can treat my family like the way they should be treated or whatever. That's our solution. Again, we go back to the physical. The reason we think that we're acting so rude and we're having all these problems is because we didn't get our food or our drinks or our caffeine. And they say, especially once you come to iftar, what happens? Now, it's not just, before they were saying, I just need a sip of water and then I'll be fine. I just need a cup of chai, I'll be okay. Just, one samosa, then I'll be good to go. But what happens once they have to come, you guys know, you come to the line of iftar, you're like, okay, first let me start with one plate, then you start with two, and then you're walking out like a waitress in Applebee's with like 10 plates in your hand. That's what happens. You think, listen, because then this is the logic that happens in our minds. I've been staying away from food and drink for 18 hours. I got to make up for it, right? So I got to eat 18 hours worth of food and drink now. We do the same thing for sleep, right? If you, let's say, don't get your proper sleep one night, you wait till the weekend, I got to catch up on my sleep, right? So I'm going to sleep half the day now all of a sudden. Especially in Ramadan, this is a good advice for us, that for both sleeping and eating, this is completely incorrect. You don't make up for these things. Why? We'll share that information, inshallah, if you can send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So we realize there's a problem here. So what's the real solution? It's not going to be eating more. We have to do something else. The first is to understand what exactly is going on. Why is it that we're feeling like this, and why do we feel the need to start stuffing ourselves at the iftar line? The first thing we have to do in order to learn how to start changing our habits is to destroy this one main misconception and misunderstanding that many of us have. And that's that satisfaction and fullness are determined by how much food you eat. This is completely incorrect. There is no science to back this up. How much you eat and drink does not translate into satisfaction and fullness in your mind and body. That's not how it works. So how does it work? How does our mind and body work? It's actually determined by your brain, interestingly enough. It's possible that an individual, like we see every night in Ramadan, a person might eat enough to fuel their body for the rest of the day, but their brain will trick them into thinking, no, you still need another plate. You still need another glass of water. You still need a little bit more caffeine. Now, why that's the case, we'll mention also. There's 3 processes sitting behind our brain which work in tandem together with our physical body, which cause us to think like this. So there's a physiological side, there's a cognitive side, and a sensory side. Again, these are fancy terms, who cares? I'll explain them. So it's the physiological, right? Simple, it's just the physical stuff, right? You get the physical feeling of hunger first, right? You physically feel hungry, you physically feel thirsty. That's what happens. Or the other side is you physically feel full, or you physically feel like you don't need any more water. Then you have your cognitive side, which is these social norms and learned behaviors and learned practices and perceptions that we have. So for example, based on the way that we were probably raised when we were younger, what you see around us, especially given this Western American society, our brains are trained to look at a certain plate of food and determine whether that's going to be enough for us or not by the way that it looks to our eyes. And that brings us to our third, the sensory. Your sight will take a look at the plate, it'll examine and say, is this enough food? That'll translate to what you've learned should be enough food for a human being, for yourself, and then that'll go into your physiological and say, okay, this will either make me feel full or it won't. Even if technically it should fill you up and give you energy, if your eyes don't see the amount that it should see, which is a normal plate that you've been raised with growing up, then you'll never have that feeling go away, and you never will feel full. So now, how do we get rid of all this? I'll give a few tips, inshallah. So again, let's break it down. You physically feel hungry. Then social norms and learned behaviors that we've had all throughout our lives tell us how much to pile on our plate. Then we look from a bird's eye view with our eyes at the plate, say, okay, that's the one that I remember, that's what it should look, that's what a plate looks like. That's what a man eats, for example, right? That's what a man's plate looks like. Then you go ahead and eat. No offense to the ladies. It shouldn't be offense, it's offense to the men, not the ladies. But anyway. So now how do you make adjustments to your eating habits in order to fix this? Now some of you are going to say, okay, well, do I have to change the amount I have to eat? Yes, you do, of course. So how can we start? Again, people like practical tips. I'm going to give you practical ones. If you can, the normal plate size and normal amount that you put down, if you can, start with cutting off a third of that right away, right? So whatever you normally put on your plate, put that on first, or before you take that last spoonful, put that down, right? Make that mental note. Now you have this plate which doesn't look normal, right? You know, your mind is telling you this doesn't look normal, it's less. How do you trick your mind or fix it back to a way where it thinks, or your brain, you're tricking your brain to think that it's actually the right amount? So the first thing is filler ingredients. What does that mean? So let's just say, okay, there's rice. So you have a big bowl of rice or a big plate of rice. So you know what a normal plate of rice should look like. So you cut off a spoonful or a third of that. So now you see that there's a gap there. So what do? First thing you do is you try to take some filler. Vegetables, little pieces of meat maybe, beans, fruit, anything else that you can put on the side of the plate. Or you can put it in the middle of the rice. Again, maybe you're not going to put fruit in your rice. I don't know. Some people have weird habits. Whatever you do that, and then you start adjusting your plate like this. You start filling the plate up so it takes up more space with other things, healthier things. The second tip is that you have to now increase the volume so you're showing your eyes that there actually is a full plate in front of you. So how do you do that? So now you've added your filler ingredients. Now you want to spread this out a little bit. So you have this gap in your plate. You kind of push your food down and spread it out, right? You flatten it out a little bit. So it looks like you have a full plate now. That's one way. Another way is, let's say you have a piece of, let's say, one chicken breast. So if somebody were to give you a plate and put one chicken breast on it, you'd say, this is not enough food, right? If you were to take that same one piece of chicken breast, but shred it, you would make a whole plate of shredded chicken. Your mind would be tricked into thinking this is a full plate, even if there's nothing else on that plate, right? So cutting into pieces is also very, very helpful. And the final thing you can do is any other type of food that you have on your plate, you start figuring out how many pieces can I make of this and adjusting it so now this looks like a huge full bowl. Now one way of doing that is actually changing whether you use a plate or a bowl so that it's not as much space, right? So if you take normally a bowl that's really deep, but the circumference is not so much, right? It's a really kind of small bowl, but it's really deep. So you're going to end up having to put a lot in there. For example, let's say for the soup. If your bowl is deep, but it doesn't look like a lot from the top, you're going to have to fill up the bowl to the top, right? And it still won't feel like a lot. But now if you have a bowl that's a bit wider and less shallow, or sorry, it's more shallow, in that case, it's going to look like a whole big plate of soup, for example. And your body and your mind will get tricked into thinking, now I'm eating a full plate or a bowl of soup. So this is some tips we wanted to offer. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, so now the nutritionist stuff is done, right? That's the physical. For those who want the physical tips, I gave you some. But now the rest of you are thinking, okay, but what's the spiritual solution? Right? Hunger is, we said, it's something that's connected to your soul. You is your soul, it's your spirit. How do I train that to stop feeling hungry or to stop feeling thirsty or to handle that feeling of having a fast or performing a fast? First point is your thinking's wrong. You're supposed to feel the fast. That's the point. It's not that you're supposed to avoid this. Now they have this modern kind of controlled suhoor. You have people who, listen, if I have this much water with this protein shake and this kind of smoothie, then it'll have a specific time release. I have this kind of capsule or medicine in the morning. It'll make sure that I don't feel any sort of pain or any sort of hunger for, 17 hours. And then, okay, for whatever, after 17 hours, maybe I'll be patient for that final hour. So people try to get rid of the hikmah of fasting with physical means. Now, it's not haram, obviously. You can do that. But again, you're taking away the wisdom behind fasting in the first place. You're supposed to feel it. That's the idea. Now, why is it the idea? First reason. In the hadith of the Ma'asumeen, as you all know, as a reminder, the first thing is you're supposed to feel the hunger that other people in the world are feeling. Alhamdulillah, we live in communities in the West where most of us we're doing well. Alhamdulillah, there's iftar served here, but I'm pretty sure if there was no masjid, if there was no center, everybody would be able to feed themselves and feed their families, and maybe be able to invite other people for that. We're doing well in this country, alhamdulillah, economically. We can feed ourselves. We can break our fast, we can have a nice suhoor. But there are a lot of people out there who can't do that, who fasting is just a normal way of life for them. Right? They don't even get a date or water a lot of the time for breaking their fast. So one wisdom that the Imam gives us is that this is so that you empathize with individuals who are like this. Another part of this is going back to this idea of being bi-akhlaqi, rude and insensitive when you're feeling the fast. Okay, so you didn't eat for a few hours, you didn't have your caffeine, and now you're being rude. Okay. Now, think about that same homeless individual that you roll your eyes towards because maybe they didn't look at you the right way. Or maybe they were acting funny at the bank. Or when they came to your place of business, you didn't like the way that they were behaving with you. This person hasn't touched food for maybe 72 hours. And they're trying to control themselves as best as possible. And they might not have the wisdom of the Ahlul-bayt like we do. But for us, 15, 16, 17, whatever hours, and if we lose our temper, whatever, I was fasting. Why can't we have that same empathy towards individuals who are suffering like this every day? So this is a thing for us to consider as well. Another benefit or wisdom behind this idea of hunger is it's supposed to teach us self-control. Now imagine, if you have any sensation of hunger, you had no thirst throughout the day, are you really controlling yourself? Like right now, for example, okay, if somebody, let's say they came in before iftar, they weren't thirsty, they weren't hungry, and then after Maghribain, they go and they eat. It doesn't really mean anything for them. Right? You say, I wasn't feeling the fast, it wasn't a big deal for me. And again, we're talking about this person from a physical perspective. If you don't have the capability of feeling a little pain, you'll never grow. Right? For example, in bodybuilding, those of you who work out, when you lift weights or you do some exercise, you start feeling pain in your muscles, either right then and there or the next morning, right? Especially after leg day, you all know. Right? You get that lactic acid buildup, for example, right? So some people say, what do I eat? What can I drink? What can I do to get rid of that feeling? That feeling is your body telling you it's growing. It's your muscles expanding, saying that, okay, you did some good work, now we're going to grow. That's the idea. This hunger is a certain feeling, which, again, we'll have to spend a bit more time discussing maybe in the future nights. But at the very least, it's right now, you think you have to eat. You need to control yourself. There's certain things you have to understand about yourself. And that brings us to our final point. That self-control is founded upon one very specific spiritual principle, which is the crux for fasting and the crux for taqwa. It's the main point. And what is that? That's self-awareness. Fasting, the reason that it can get you towards having more taqwa is because fasting can lead you to have more self-awareness, to figure out, who am I? What is my thinking pattern like? What am I in reality? Who am I actually? Is this hunger that I'm feeling actually me feeling hunger, or is it something else? When I feel parched, when I feel this dryness on my tongue, is it my body controlling me, or should I be telling my body that, no, I don't feel thirsty? It should make a person go back and reflect on themselves and determine who's in control right now. This idea of self-awareness, inshallah, we're going to mention in maybe 2-3 nights, because this deserves its own lecture. We need to figure out, how can we become more aware of who we are, deep down, our soul, our spirit, that thing inside you, that voice that's inside you when you talk to yourself. When do you know if that's really you, or when do you know if that's shaitan? When do you know if something's trying to divinely inspire you, or when is a voice coming in to try and to take you away and bring you somewhere else? When a voice comes, for example, let's say when your alarm goes off for Fajr, and you feel tired, right? And the voice comes and say, listen, if you wake up and read Fajr right now, or your voice might say, if I, or if we, however your voice is, if I wake up and read Fajr right now, I'm going to be really tired, I know. And if I try to sleep, then I'll have to wake up for school or work, and I'll be really, really tired. And I won't have energy. And God doesn't want me to be tired at work. He doesn't want me to be tired at school. So maybe I should just snooze my alarm, and maybe I'll wake up 5 minutes before sunrise, and then I can read Fajr then. And you all know the story. What happens is, obviously, you sleep through that alarm, and then you've got a qadha waiting for you on Laylatul Qadr, basically, right? That's what happens. How do you know what's really going on? How do you know what's really you? Inshallah, we'll mention that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So just to conclude what we talked about tonight before we go on to questions. Our true strength doesn't lie in the physical. Your true resolve is a spiritual resolve. Your real self is your spiritual self. You need to figure out and get connected with your spiritual self, your soul, and start controlling your physical body like this. Fasting allows for that in the first place. Keeping away from food and drink will show you that I'm in charge of these things. It should be able to rewire your normal outlook, your normal ideology, your normal thinking patterns. This is one of the benefits of fasting. When it comes to feeling the fast, we have these learned bad eating habits that we've had since we were younger, of what it looks like to feel full, what it looks like, what happens when we feel hunger, and how do we take care of it. So we said, our brain tricks us. How do we re-trick the brain into going to a place where we eat enough that it fuels our body for what we need for the rest of the day? We said use filler ingredients and try to create more volume and make your eyes look like, make it feel like it's looking like it's looking at a full plate. If you can do this, then slowly and slowly you can start cutting down the amount you eat. And very, very soon, inshallah, you'll see. Start practicing this from the tomorrow morning for suhoor. I would encourage everybody to practice, and especially for tomorrow night for iftar. Because these are practical things that you won't get at many other places unless you do the research. Try this out. If it doesn't work, come back and we'll do whatever you have to do to me. But I'm telling you it's going to work, right? And the final thing we mentioned is that if you feel the fast, don't be alarmed. It's normal. You're supposed to feel it. One, to empathize with those who are less fortunate. Second, to learn how to control yourself. And third, to get in contact with your real self, to figure out who am I and become more self-aware. Ala Muhammad. So there was 2 questions that were asked last night after we were finished with the program. So I want to mention those, and if there's time to go through any of the questions tonight, we'll do that. So the first question, which I'll read, is this person said, since our daily schedule is limited due to many obligations, what are some a'mal and actions and ibadat that we should prioritize so that we can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this holy month? It's a really good question. The problem is there's really no good answer. Well, I can give you a general answer, maybe. So, our lives are packed. We've got work, we've got school, we have obligations to family. That's obvious. When it comes to prioritizing what to do, now some people are looking for a specific dua, like read this dua, or recite Quran, or for example, finish the Quran. Or some might advise you, well, don't do as much Quran as possible. Do as little as you can, as long as you do tafsir or something on the side. Or some will say, listen to some lectures. Everybody will try to pick a specific thing, but everybody's different. You can't give a specific answer. The real answer perhaps lies in, again, the self-awareness idea, as you have to figure out how can you truly improve yourself in this holy month? How do you connect to Allah yourself? Okay, if that means reciting dua iftitah in jama'at, then come and do that. If that's what builds you up and makes you more aware and brings that presence of heart, and maybe you shed a tear, become more humble, do that. If you prefer to recite du'as individually and that brings you, then find the time necessary by yourself, either in the morning, before Fajr, after Fajr, whenever, recite your du'as then and make that connection with whatever du'a that is beneficial for you. Now some people emphasize finishing a du'a. Our ulama actually don't emphasize that. If there's a certain du'a or ziyarah that you like and you get tired because it's long, nobody said you have to finish it. It's not a race, right? It's, again, we said last night, don't just check these things off on an ibadat list. For example, like dua sabah. It's a beautiful dua in the morning. But let's say maybe it's too much for you to recite in the morning, or maybe it's too long. Find whatever time you can, whenever it's feasible for you, and recite as much as your heart can get attached to. The key here, it's actually very similar to food. The minute that you feel that your heart might start pulling away and now you're just reciting like a robot, stop right there. Even for the Quran, they say the same thing. Don't make it that I want to finish one juz, one sipara per night. That's not a good goal to have. For those who are connected to the Quran, great, do that if you want. Or if you just want a bunch of, again, good boy points, fine, do that. If you're trying to get closer to Allah, okay, pick up the Quran, start reading. Maybe stop, reflect, think about it. If you have time to look at tafsir, look at that. But if you start getting tired of reading, you need to stop. That's your soul saying that, all right, that's enough of it, we've reached our limit, that's it. These are some general advices you can have. So again, the summary is, you need to find something that you can personally attach yourself to that'll make you improve. Even if it's self-improvement videos and things like that. That might be good. The second question from last night was, why do you think 60% of Muslims are not praying? So this is a dangerous one, but it's a really good one. So there's a lot of reasons and there's a big discussion. And in fact, I feel like it does deserve its own lecture. And inshallah, I think tomorrow night we might address this. Given a few words for all of you to think about, maybe to discuss with your friends and family tonight. First thing we have to talk about, okay, these individuals, 60% of Muslims were not praying. Again, we don't want to have a negative view of them. There's a reason why they're not praying. One is they probably don't buy this religious stuff. You look at the material, you look at the statistics, that's what they say. They said all this God stuff, this religion stuff, it doesn't make sense to me. People think that you can solve the furu'id-din by telling somebody, hey, this is the furu'id-din. You want to solve somebody who doesn't pray, say it's wajib to pray. If somebody's not observing hijab, people think you solve it by saying it's wajib to observe hijab. When has that ever worked? It doesn't really work. It's different, but in the history of my limited experience, I've never seen this work. They say, our ulama say, the reason somebody doesn't practice their furu'id-din is because they never understood the usul-id-din. They don't want to pray to God is because they don't believe in God. They don't believe that there's some guy out there listening to them reciting some Arabic words. And especially in this society, if a rational, logical reasoning and proofs are not given to these types of individuals, they probably won't buy it. The same arguments and discussions and proofs that might have worked for people who've come from the East or Muslim nations, it may not work for people over here. I don't want to make a general claim, but again, this is my experience over here, is that the nature and the method of delivery has to be different in our society, especially for the youth, but even some elders. Now, how we can get to that, inshallah, we'll talk about tomorrow night. Okay, maybe one or two more. Okay. When do you stop eating, at imsak or fajr time? Okay. So I know a lot of you know that it's good to discuss one fiqh masala every night. And I wanted to do that, and actually wanted to talk about this masala specifically, so it was good that this person asked. Although, if this person doesn't like me, this is a good way for getting me in trouble too. So what does imsak mean? Imsak in Arabic basically means to restrain yourself, right? To hold back, to abstain. On typical calendars that we're given over here, you see two different times. You see imsak time, which is usually 10, 15, 20 minutes before fajr. Then you have a fajr time. Now, I don't want to offend anybody or upset anybody. I don't know how else to do this. Again, time's limited, so there's no such thing as imsak time. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as ihtiyat imsak time. Your fast starts from fajr and it ends at maghrib, right, for most marajih. That's it. Fajr, if fajr is 5:15, you have to stop eating at 5:14:59, right, basically. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just giving you what the actual rule is. Remember, ahkam have their own place in Islam, but there's also ethics and morality and spirituality which has a higher place. I'm giving you the rule. You have to stop eating before Fajr time. Now, does that mean eat till that second? No, I would never advise that. It's not a good idea. Why? Because it's a good idea to wash your mouth, brush your teeth, get out all that extra stuff. So, if somebody wants to stop at imsak time, that's a good idea. Do it. And then afterwards, whatever, you want to recite du'as or do your salatul layl then, or brush your teeth then, yeah, I would say that's a good practical habit to have. But it's incorrect Islamically to say that imsak is mustahab or it's ihtiyat like that. That's not correct. As a practical benefit, it's good, but there is no Islamic evidence for this. And I don't think I've seen anything in the English Q&A on Ayatollah Sistani's website, but there's a clear question that was asked, I believe, in both Arabic and Farsi. If anybody wants to see it, I can show you. But those of you who have done the research, you know that imsak is not something that exists. Why do we fast? We can get dehydrated. That's true. You could get dehydrated. So it's two separate questions, I think, or maybe a point that it might take a bit longer to answer. So if it came from the brother side, maybe I'll personally answer it to the individual afterwards. And if anybody else wants to hear it later, they can come and ask me, or I can mention it tomorrow. Otherwise, I think it'll take a bit too much time. Why do we fast? Well, I'm giving a few reasons right now, or I gave a few reasons. And then maybe tomorrow night, I'll give a few more reasons, and we'll continue, inshallah, in that regard. But we can get dehydrated is more of a fiqhi issue. I mean, we know the rules. If you're going to die, then, or if it's that difficult for you, you're allowed to have enough to keep yourself alive, right? And, well, this ties into self-awareness and this trick of the mind. What sometimes we might think is dehydration is, again, I have to be politically incorrect sometimes. I think it's us being babies. Sorry, I have to put it that way. Right, you know, I'm dying, I'm starving. You're not starving, right? It's okay. You can go without a few hundred calories for this amount of time. But it takes some training. And again, I don't want to say anything about those who might have medical conditions. Obviously, that's in its own place. But for us, generally, we've been raised a certain way. Our mind is tricking us to think that we're dehydrated or we're super hungry or starving. Like these ideas of being hangry. Like, I hate these kind of terms. But they exist in our lexicon, and they have to be addressed. When we talk about self-awareness, inshallah, maybe we can mention it more. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.